Good evening, folks. Welcome to the second of our. What do we call these, Adam?
I don't know. I'm thinking about, and this is a nod to a thing that I previously did with Paul Anderson, who has commented on these videos. There was a podcast called Shush, we're watching a movie. But I like the idea of something along the lines of talking through the movie, because
Ooh,
we're not really talking. We're not talking about valid points. We're just sort of waffling, and I think
this
that's
is
the very worst kind of talking through a movie.
fluff and waffle at the pictures.
Fluff and waffle, yes. I will have a fluff and waffle dripping with sarcasm, please.
Ooh, I like that. So yes, welcome to Fluff and Waffle through the movies, folks. I'm David. This is Adam.
Hello.
Hello. And today we are going to be watching, in the background at least, Mutant Chronicles, which is
What's your history with this?
well, Mutant Chronicles is funny with me because it was actually the first non-GW tabletop system I interacted with, and it was around the time I was getting into 40k because a friend of mine at school had both the Rogue Trader rulebook and the Mutant Chronicles RPG rulebook.
Okay.
And Mutant Chronicles is an interesting one because for a minute in the 90s it was kind of encroaching quite heavily on GW space because the Warzone tabletop game spun off from it was a big seller in the 90s. It was doing decent numbers. And it's kind of a fascinating universe. For anyone who's not aware, Mutant Chronicles is kind of what's known as a diesel punk setting. It is set thousands of years in the future where humanity has had to flee Earth and divest themselves of all high technology because this thing called the dark symmetry has arisen, which corrupts any technology more advanced than, well, mid 20th century steam and diesel power, really. But humanity is still spread across the solar system. So they colonized Mars and Venus, the moon, and various moons around different planetary bodies. And it's kind of gnarly. I mean, it's a bit like Battletech in that all the factions kind of skew to a particular ethnic stereotype in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So you've got the Japanese-inspired Mishima, the very British Imperial, German Bauhaus, Capital, very American. You have the Brotherhood, who are like the church, the Dark Symmetry, of course, and then overseen because the setting is run by they're corporations basically. They're not governments; they're corporations running things. They all gather as the cartel to oversee things. Have their own special unit called the Doom Troopers, who are their version of triple hard bastards.
Okay.
But it's one of those games where it's the only setting I've seen where it gives 40k a run for its money in the shoulder pad department. And I include War Machine and StarCraft in that discussion because they ain't got nothing on the Mutant Chronicles setting. They know a good shoulder pad.
It was the time, wasn't it? It's very, as well, it's very 2000 AD.
Oh, absolutely. It's a fascinating setting. I mean, it's kind of gone for a few different owners over the years because of rights and whatnot. So Warzone came back as Warzone Resurrection, which I've got a few minis of by the guys at Prodos. Very nice in resin, very distinctive. That game shuttered about 6-7 years ago now, I think, properly.
Okay.
And a couple of years ago, a crowdfunder went through to bring it back as Warzone Eternal, going back to the style of the 90s, early 2000s war game. So whereas Resurrection had a much more modern aesthetic to things, they've gone back a bit with this. Modifius had the license for the core Mutant Chronicles RPG for quite a while, actually. released a lot of good supplements for that and expanded things. They introduced for White Star, the last survivors of humanity on Earth, who of course are Russian, because, well, who else would survive on a demon-infested Earth? Of course it'd be
Indeed.
for Russians. Um, and they also crowdfunded an update to the classic Siege for Citadel board game, which
Oh,
I actually own a full copy of because I backed it. It's a ludicrously involved package, but the original game from the 90s was a dungeon crawler that had this huge plastic setup in the middle of steps, so you could actually have your Doom Troopers fighting up the steps to the center of the citadel, which was fun. But
oh, that. Oh, I'll tell you what. Whilst you, because let's crack the film on, because
absolutely, yeah, let's do it.
let's face it, it's not going to change how what we're talking about probably.
Nah.
But I just it's suddenly when you mentioned steps as well, I got this idea of a battleship Potemkin
Hmm.
style battle up the steps.
Yeah.
Or for those slightly newer, the 90s De Palma, Untouchables.
Yeah.
Sorry, 80s De Palma. My God,
The
I'm
the
old.
un the God, I've forgotten the title now. The Untouchables.
Yeah, the Untouchables. And for anyone who is a fan of short movies, um, my film school, and I'm mentioning this because I am gonna, oh, believe me, I'm gonna talk about film school with this film. Um, but so about well, actually 2 years. I joined. There's a reason to this, folks. I assure you. Our course was a 2 year course, 1 year trainee, 2 year master. Okay, and by master I mean you were in charge. So first year you would assist, second you would do. So the year above our second years were the ones that our second years looked up to. So we looked up to our second years. They looked up to these people now in the industry. So therefore, they were a big deal. They were a really big deal to us. You know, it's like your boss's boss.
Hmm.
Um, and the reason that our boss's boss, one of them, was really well like, hyped up is because he did for Bournemouth Film School. He wrote a film called Potemkin: The Editor's Cut, and it was about the story of the making of Battleship Potemkin, and it was
Oh.
kind of a slight wry comedy on the fact of how the whole thing came together. And the weirdest thing is that they managed to get Charles Dance
Oh
in a
wow.
role. And my mate shot it. And in fact, my mate as well on Facebook, he this week, just this morning, he posted a really old picture of me. I took a picture of him shooting on 16mm back in the day, and we remembered together the time when we were both young. He had hair, I never had hair, and that we were making films. But yeah, Potemkin. There we go. Anyway,
Wow.
so so you mentioned obviously the 90s is the heyday for this
Hmm.
game, and this is it. This is a board game.
Well, it's a
Um,
role-playing game.
role playing. So
It- it-
was this? I mean, because we're seeing this as well. We're saying like because it's no surprise that this came out like 2008. 2008 seems to be like a year for a lot of stuff
mm.
changing over or happening. But I'm trying to remember how big were role playing games in the first like 10 years of the 2000s?
I mean, they weren't bad. I mean, I at that time I was working in a Borders bookshop, and we had
Yeah,
a dedicated RPG section.
right.
I mean, we
Mm,
would have not this one, but we'd have a lot of the Wizards of the Coast books, so we had all the D&D stuff. But I remember the local non-GW hobby shop that I know of in my local town, Spot On Hobbies, for the longest time, through like the 90s through the mid 2000s, had a lot of these books for Mutant Chronicles and some of the other systems. So
yeah.
the systems were out there. I mean, Star Wars was going strong because you went from West End Games' classic 6D6 system to Wizards of the Coast took over for the prequel era with books. But a lot of people knocked on those, but they were still big releases, very well produced. D&D was going through third and fourth at this time.
Mm.
I think it had just hit fourth when after this film had come out, so they were really pushing that market. But
You know, there is an irony I've just realized as well, and
Hmm.
I know there's stuff going on the screen. We are going to talk about it. I promise. I
We
promise.
will do
Um,
eventually. Honest.
um, but it just occurred to me, all of the stuff with Borders probably it was always going to happen because it was the ultimate fad. It was books as a fad.
Hmm.
Um, and the internet hadn't really sunk its teeth into everyone yet.
Hmm.
You know, the older people still didn't have the internet or didn't know what it was.
Hmm.
Yes, even in 2000. Um, hey, Facebook had only just started.
Yeah.
But
Uh,
one thing though that the Borders never did. I don't think any Borders embraced tabletop gaming or the idea of holding gaming sessions. And
you say
although,
that
oh,
my store did.
really? Oh,
Yes.
wow.
Or we were trying to. So
Ah,
we regularly ran Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon tournaments and
okay.
events, which are kind of a given.
Yeah,
Um, I actually went to a lot of effort to push to get us to carry, because this was around a time where collectible miniature games were kind of the big thing.
yeah.
So when I started working there, we did carry some of the initial HeroClix and MechWarrior Dark Age stuff, and a
Okay.
few of those type systems around 2004, 2005.
Yeah.
Um, Eventually, I got into a position where I both ran the genre department for the longest time, and I also got put in charge of the front of store at one point. And one of those jobs entailed managing you've got as you queue up, you have the panels on display around things.
Yeah.
So we were quite keen to come up with ideas for some of this. So I actually pushed with our buy-in team at head office to get in to see what we could get in for the Star Wars miniatures game that Wizard of the
Yeah.
Coast did, the pre-painted blind boosters. We actually did get pretty much everything from the Revenge of the Sith box set they did for that, right through to well, to where the game ended after when I left the company, when our shop closed,
Mm.
uh, which was pretty much most of the system, most of the series, to be fair. We got in a load of HeroClix and D&D miniatures. So we had a lot of, the big dragons.
Yeah.
We had a lot of those in the big pre-painted dragons
Wow.
and the miniature boosters that went along with the fourth edition release. So and I was actually looking for the longest time at trying to do proper tabletop events if possible. They were just a bit trickier to organize. But we did have the space and the dispensation to do events. So we ran
Good
regular
for you.
movie quiz nights
Yeah.
where we actually got some quite nice merch in from our buy-in team, from the merchandise teams of various departments, various companies for that. Uh, we we had a lot of book signings over the years, which was quite
Mm.
good. Uh, And the funny thing is, Borders UK was actually doing quite well. All of Borders internationally was. It was the American branch that wasn't doing as well,
Yeah.
and they kind of sold off their international arms to carry on going. And the British arm was bought by the previous head of the company who had been booted out. He formed a consortium, and they came in and bought the company. And that was when when it started going a bit downhill because I mean, we were quite proud of the service we offered. So if you ran a department, most of our team could tell you if a book was in stock
Yeah.
and where it was, or a DVD or a CD or whatever. And because we had really good specialist knowledge, we had a very passionate team. I mean, again, we were the first store in the company to have a dedicated paranormal romance section for all of like the Anita Blake series, stuff like that.
Okay.
Because I pushed the thing like, because I could see it was distinct, separate genre that was coming out,
True. That's the thing,
and
isn't
and
it? It
and
is
that,
popular.
and I had actually, when I went to visit from friends in Wales in one of the newer shops, their genre section had a paranormal romance section that was based on how I laid out my section in Swindon, which I was
Wow.
quite proud of that. But no, we had a bit of a writing on the walls moment because we'd have guys from head office come in and say, "Oh, you can't have a full pocket of a book. We want you to have or a full pocket of a film. We want you to have all different DVDs in a single pocket,"
Yep.
which annoyed the hell out of all of us because one, it meant you could never tell where anything was, and it made stock keeping a nightmare as well. And it was something we actually prided ourselves on. And the guy came down and said, "Oh, but I saw it in the supermarket and they do wonderfully." And I wanted to slap him because it's
Yeah,
like that's a
that's
different
corporate.
it's a different mindset. And we started
Mm.
getting in this really nasty. I don't. I hate to call it tap, but
Yeah, I know what you mean.
we've been getting
Yeah,
fungus involved, but we started getting in these really quite nasty, cheapo toys to put on the counters
yeah,
towards the front of the shop.
yeah.
These
It, yeah. It
and
just
yeah,
it,
it
it
was
you start to look like the works.
yeah, it was not a fun time. We were. It's weird to say, but we were kind of fortunate that we were one of the first shops to be shut down in mid 2008 because they basically sold us to Next
Yeah,
and used that rent to get through the next 6 months. They closed at Christmas time
right.
in the end in the UK, but it meant me and my team we got redundancy, which was better than nothing. I know that a lot of the guys who their stores had on they got bugger all, which is frustrating
Yeah.
because the teams at these shops were really passionate. They knew their stuff.
I know at least one or two people that worked in. I know, similar as well. The Waterstones as well
Yeah,
had a similar
absolutely.
thing with people that were passionate about a particular section. And then you had, I think it was Southampton that was famously like the guy who dealt downstairs with the sci-fi and fantasy and hated it and
Mm.
would actually just would literally swear at people when they went down there.
Oh, that's
And because I don't know why. I think for him it was a nightmare. But also in London as well, you had London. You had this very much the Friends kind of central perk thing of they had a coffee shop where
mm,
you buy your coffee and then it was free refills. So people would spend all
mm,
day there, and I mean, they were packed all day, and it
yeah,
meant the shop was busy, and people always bought stuff.
yeah. Well, I
And
mean, we had
then,
we had a Starbucks concession on the
well,
mezzanine that
That's that's what happened to us because we came in one day and well, I know it was one day, and this tells you how much I went in there because I was filmmaking at the time.
mm.
But the lady behind the counter sort of said, "Look, I'm sorry, we're not going to be here anymore.
Oh,
Um,
that's a shame.
they're getting a Starbucks in." And I was genuinely gutted because I knew these people.
Yeah,
And um, then when I went into the Starbucks, all new staff. I bought a coffee. It was obviously three times the price. I
yeah.
was like, well, where's the refills? Oh, there are no refills. Well, then
Mm.
why? You don't expect me to spend any time in this shop. And that's what happened. They even started like, if you started reading a book, sat down, they would check you after about 15 minutes.
See, well, thankfully, our Starbucks wasn't like that because it had been there from the start of the shop. It was there when I started there,
Hmm.
and it was kind of the selling point of that location that they could people would come in and they'd get a coffee, and they'd have maybe a book or something from downstairs and have a flick through and stuff. So it was a good way of keeping people in the coffee shop.
I
So
should, I hate to do this. I really do. But we're going to have to talk about the screen.
we
Um,
probably should.
in the point where the two gentlemen have had their confrontation, the camera has been moving which means that framing, like you shot on one character, complements the framing on another. They're
Mm.
from the different sides, but it complements. This is the only time in the film that anyone follows the line. It's really weird. Now,
Yeah.
can you explain? So we've already before we start the film, we've had the backstory that there
Mm.
was a war, it ended. It's almost
So
are we seeing by the way, are we seeing like a them trying to compact down the entire game and lore into like a couple of scenes at the start and then play it forward? Or is this
kind of
brand new?
they're effectively. give what
And
this
what has
movie is
happened?
effectively is the origins of the Mutant Chronicles universe. So
Okay.
the initial scene was of this band of religious warriors who fought a war with the agents of the Dark Symmetry, and they locked it away. They sealed it,
Hmm.
and then you flashed forward to 2707, where we are now, and you have the world divided into these corporate blocks who are at war with each other.
Yes.
And you've got a bunch of capital boys led by Sean Pertwee and
Sean Pertwee, patron saint of this film series, I feel.
yeah, Sean Pertwee's going to turn up a lot, I have no doubt, because bless him, he's great. And I've forgotten his bloody name. Who is it?
Oh, what?
Hang on,
Thomas Jane?
that was it. Thomas Jane. How do I
Yeah.
forget his name? So yeah, they're ostensibly our two heroes in a
Right.
way. On the side of Capital, which is no, no, yeah, these are Capital troops going by the insignia.
Okay.
And they've been fighting Bauhaus, force led by Max Steiner. The
Lovely.
funny thing is that Tom Jane's character and the Max Steiner character, so Mitch Hunter and Max Steiner, are both named characters in the setting of the core game, which is like hundreds of years after what happens here, because this is the fall of Earth. This is the Dark Symmetries rising, because earlier on we saw an artillery shell blow open the seal because
Yes.
things got that bad, and now things have gone a little bit to hell. Oh, it's the other patron saint of this channel, young Master Perlman.
And
Bless him.
by the way, things are bad when they're chanting in Gaelic.
Yeah,
Um,
I, I love subtitles like that. I've been watching
yeah, no,
I've been watching Macross Frontier on Disney Plus because that dropped a couple of days ago, and hilariously you get moments of roaring music in the subtitles.
um, before we start recording, I mentioned to you Sin City,
Mm.
and Sin City was 2005. Something that obviously I watched this film. There's actually stuff I remember. Everything I remember about this film at the time in our national press involves this young lady on the screen,
Oh,
who
okay.
is probably almost lowest billing because
Yeah.
she's not internationally known. But she was in Coronation Street at the no, Emmerdale, I believe, at the time.
Oh, was she?
And so it was a kind of a big deal that she was doing a brackets Hollywood film.
Hmm.
Um, but the Sin City was 2005.
Yeah.
And then we talked on Ultramarine. We said that there was this spirit, and there was this spirit that had grown through the build up to the credit crunch because everything was going well. You could get loans for nothing.
Mm.
People would give you anything. People were mining IP left, right, and center in the film space. We'd yet to hit that Marvel universe, which
Mm.
is really important because that changed everything,
Oh, yeah.
unfortunately. Um, and we were still coming as well off the wave of the Quentin Tarantino's, the Robert Rodriguez, and the Kevin Smith. The
Mm.
follow-ups to those films, low budgets were still showing in cinemas. Sin
Yeah.
City was huge because it was the first time they just went screw the set, and Sin City was literally shot in like a warehouse with a load of
Yeah.
green screen. And if you ever get the DVD, by the way, for Sin
Mm.
City, the way I mean, there's low budget and then there's that.
Yeah.
Ironically, he then returned and did an episode of The Mandalorian. He tried to do the same thing and he failed miserably with a bigger budget.
See,
So
I
did he.
like that episode. It's tight. It's only like 30 minutes, but it's one of my favorites of that season of The
He's
Mandalorian.
I think maybe it's the challenge as well of I think if he'd not been given the scooters, I
Mm.
think it would have been amazing. But he was given those scooters. He couldn't work his magic with those. Nobody could. They were
No.
just no. But you had this belief as well at the time that you could make a movie. You
Yeah.
didn't need so there's the Rodriguez thing of you don't need $1 million, you only need 7,000. Ironic because his 7,000 film then actually then cost an extra 250,000 to post. But
Yeah.
fair play, the original 7,000 that he got his feature deal with, he included that on the DVD. so you
Yeah,
can see it, and it's damn good. You've got
absolutely.
Kevin Smith, who did it for 10K.
Hmm.
Again, a lot of ups, stuff on top. Sky Captain's the weird one because it cost a fortune. But
Yeah, I remember.
even the director was like, the director's brothers famously said, we could have made this for 3 million. It
Mm,
says it made 70 million. Where did the money where did the
yeah.
extra 67 go? And
I
I
mean,
get
Sky
the
Captain's a win because for the time it had names who were. I mean, you had Angelina Jolie,
huge.
Jude Law, Gwyneth
Jolie was
Paltrow,
Jolie was literally the hottest thing in
yeah,
films
and
and even though
Giovanna
it's
Ribisi
small, yeah.
were. They were the four big names in that film with a resurrected. Uh,
Oh gosh, yeah.
yeah, they used some CGI shenanigans to resurrect
Not
Laurence
also
Olivier.
that's it. How did they get the rights? That must have been one of the first
I think
it
they
must
actually
have
used
done.
footage from an older film and spliced it in. They did a
Oh,
bit
okay.
of a Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid thing with that one.
Cool.
So it wasn't quite as icky as we're kind of getting to now, where some people are selling away their rights to their faces just so and
Or
the
voices,
voices,
yeah,
well,
there's some
so they don't get the situation of the companies just doing it for free once they're dead.
it's
So
true. It's weird as well. I've just realized as well that you again, because the beauty of film is that everything goes around comes the idea of you selling your likeness and your being and all of that, you're selling your soul essentially to a
mm,
corporation, came up recently in the Fallout
yeah,
TV show. There's actually a scene on it. But also as well, corporations going to war. The latest season of Doctor Who, honestly, one of the
yeah,
episodes could have been set in this universe.
yeah.
Admittedly, less mutants, more weird ambulances, but pretty much the same feeling.
Yeah, in some
Um,
ways, this is a very the setting's a bit prescient in that regard
it is,
because
yeah.
there's stuff that was happening here. I mean, again, a lot of the core fluff of the setting hasn't changed in 30 odd years since the first setting books. They've stayed pretty much the same. They've just built out on it. But
It
it's a
does,
fascinating approach to make it a prequel.
yeah. And
I
also they've done the thing here as well where and it's the same as Ultramarine. They
mm,
clearly want to try every camera trick in the book, even though
mm,
it doesn't work for most situations. Even though you could have actually put the beginning battle almost in a different part of the film and it probably would have worked better. Because it just feels like a bit, stop and start and
yeah,
action for action's sake. But I mean, they bless them. 25 mil, which is what I believe this cost.
mm.
They really did try.
And the thing is,
Um,
for when this was made, 25 mil is really nothing
no,
especially for a sci-fi feature.
yeah.
And I kind of get I always appreciate the fact that why they moved it to a prequel and made it because they avoided having to make it as high tech as they would have had to for the if they
Oh,
set
that's
it in
true.
kind
Yeah.
of like the core setting. Because in the core setting you've got to factor in you've got terraformed Mars and Venus, the moon. You've got all these environments that really wouldn't work unless you put the money in, especially with a very specific way of setting is divine. This way they could shoot it. They used a lot of they kept it urban and bar and dank. They used a lot of very World War II, World War One inspired uniforms and equipment, just sci-fied up. God, I forgot that they killed the kid in that. I'd forgotten about that scene.
It's it's so I mean, you can often have the tragic sacrifice,
Hmm.
and I get that. But to have a tragic sacrifice where literally nothing goes right for anyone, and it's just that
Yeah,
was a bit crap, wasn't it?
yeah, and
But no, I mean, look, they got their big actors. They got
yeah,
John Malkovich, which is
and the
brilliant.
funny is, Malkovich gets a bit of flack for this film, where people said he's playing boring, but I don't get that. I get that he's playing this character who he spent his life being basically a bit of a bastard, and he makes the choice at this last moment to do the right thing. He gives Perlman's character what he's asked for,
Mm.
or as much as he can do. and he's not even trying to flee Earth himself. He's resigned to it. He knows that this is on his watch, and he's kind of
He's resigned to it, but there's also a little bit of peace that he's gained. It's
mm,
it's it's actually a bit it's delicate for this film.
yeah.
It's certainly more delicate than anything else we're gonna see.
Oh yeah. And I know Malkovich has a bit of reputation for going broad in the last what well, since before this film came out, he had a reputation for hamming it up big style. But it's a reminder he's not an actor who's always about the paycheck. He actually can, if you get him on board, he'll give you a damn good performance.
I think
So,
I think most of the time though it's about the quality of script. I
mm,
guarantee you for all yeah, he's had great roles. That's because he's been given good scripts.
mm,
But if there's no script coming in and a script like this lands,
mm.
um, well, you do it.
Yeah, and that's it's not a great script, but it it kind of does what it needs to. I mean, if you get actors like Perlman and Malkovich, and even Jane and Pertwee,
Mm.
they'll they'll take the material and they'll run with it as much as they can do.
Sorry, it's weird as well. Without without actually hearing them speak those lines and just seeing the actors you know, giving it that with the facial expressions in that moment.
Mm,
Yeah, it is actually quite distracting. It's
yeah,
I mean, don't worry, that'll soon pass. We'll
yeah,
we'll soon be into the good stuff that people are here for.
mm,
Um, but yeah, the as I said, the before the recording started. Sorry, I'm now starting to burp for no reason. I'm turning into a mutant. But so 2005, you had Sin City,
mm.
and I really think that Sin City was very much an experimental.
Oh yeah.
Nobody had really knew exactly what was going. 300. Oh my gosh. Um, I'm remember.
I mean, it was really Sin City and 300 were the standard bearers for this type of filmmaking at that time.
Yes,
There hadn't
and
really been anything, and the thing is, they're both Frank Miller graphic novels, both
yes.
properties that honestly no one thought could be done because of how because of the visual style of the productions.
Yeah, and 300 was after Sin City. I
Mm,
just checked. But
just about, yeah.
when Sin City came out, it came out with a very comic based I know my role trailer 1.
Mm,
Trailer 2 is virtually the same except it's like okay, we think that this is actually pretty good. We're now going to do a proper
mm,
cinema trailer and it absolutely banks. Brilliant. And
yeah.
I think a lot of people saw this, the trailer, not the film, because they were already hyped by the trailer and went, well, if they can do that, then we can.
Mm,
And the fact that, Sin City had its non-digital release, which I always loved, which is them all against green screens. Something which 20 years later, the latest Planet of the Apes, they've said they're going to have a version on the CD release of the latest film, and it's going to be the actors playing the chimps.
ooh,
You're going to see them wearing the mocap. It's
I'd
going to
love to
be,
see that.
and I just,
That's
again, it's like that's a big deal now to
it.
a very small percentage, admittedly, of fans, but people are going to pick that shit up because it's like, oh, yes.
Yeah.
And it's also pushing on that thing of, wow, it's a real film. Oh, wow, we can really make this for this level of money.
Mm,
So I love how all these things kind of come in circles.
yeah.
Um,
It's like one of my favorite underrated movies, and it's going to be a really weird one to have discussed whilst we're watching this particular film. Tintin,
okay. No,
Peter
yeah, yeah,
Jackson,
no, yeah.
Peter Jackson, Steven Spielberg. To this day, I'm still gutted that we never got the second film where they were going to flip the producer and director roles.
Mm.
Because I think it was Jackson did the first one.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, because then Spielberg was going to direct the second and Jackson produce it with uh, I've forgotten the writer as well, but the same writer
Was
on
it?
board as well. Joe Cornish.
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, but the behind the scenes of that film is astonishing because it's they shot it all on physical sets, but they were all like wire framework effectively.
And
And to
uh,
see,
th-
but with the actual actors and everything doing the stuff, and it's
yeah, I believe as well. Like his, didn't he have Doctor Who writer was originally on that with him.
Stephen Moffat I think was involved. Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
then he got offered Who,
mm,
and Spielberg went, "Well, you can't turn down Who." And
no,
it was like, wow, okay, that's reason number 426 to like Steven Spielberg.
yeah. I mean, yes, if you're working on a film that's involving Steven Spielberg and Peter Jackson, Peter Jackson is acknowledged as one of the world's biggest Who fans anyway. to have
Mm,
to suddenly have to go up to him and say, "Guys, I have to. I've been offered this." They would both tell you to go and do it, you moron. So, but it's like I was saying, it's one of those things. There was no the actual buildings, everything weren't there. They built wireframe sets, everyone in mocap, but it was the actual actors playing the characters, and it turned out. I think it's still one of my one of my favorite films, frankly. And but to see those behind the scenes bits, and now to know that, like I said, with Planet of the Apes, they're doing that sort of thing. They're going to make that more
yeah.
available. As a film nerd, I love that because I do genuinely love bits and pieces of movie making and just the technology behind things.
This
So,
this is gonna blow your mind. Right, so we just had a scene with Thomas Jane and Ron Perlman.
hmm,
For context, so this is sorry, I keep forgetting. It's 2008. 2004 was The Punisher.
hmm,
2007 was The Mist,
yeah,
which so he was in that lower budget threshold, but he was certainly well known.
hmm,
But I honestly, because of the timing, I imagine he pretty much moved from this onto his next project, which was the TV show Hung. Now, I don't know if you know what Hung was all
yeah.
about.
I know what Hung is.
So Thomas Jane basically plays a man who I think he gets cheated on, but is divorced anyway.
Yeah,
And the only asset he has is that he's very well hung. So he
yeah,
becomes a gigolo.
yep,
So that's on one side. Then meanwhile, Mr. Ron Perlman, um, Hellboy was 2004.
hmm,
This 2008, Hellboy 2 Golden Army,
yeah,
aka one of the most beautiful films you will ever
yeah,
see.
uh,
But not only that, this year also Sons of Anarchy started.
yeah.
He was a busy boy.
He was for
So he was doing this like at weekends.
yeah, but yeah, for Perlman's this is a guy who now the Hellboy makeup is not a comfortable makeup to wear at all.
No,
No, he said this himself. It's a pain in the ass to get into that makeup, and at this point he's still not a spring chicken. At this point, he's in his 50s, I think, when
yeah.
this came out. This is a man who willingly put on the entire makeup to go and meet a terminally ill child.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
I mean,
that was just incredible.
yeah,
That was just yeah. By the way,
and
he's currently 74.
mm,
The
yeah,
only thing he's still too young to do is run for American office.
and yet he's
Anyway,
still
moving on.
busy as anything. It's great.
By the way, I looked up Thomas Jane on Google,
Mm.
and one of the automatic images that come up makes him look like Frank Spencer, which
Oh,
is, and I'm not even joking. So people maybe don't do that. Thomas Jane though, he like by this point had he done what was it called? Cleaning Day?
Uh,
had he I'm trying to find out when he did that. Now, for
I
those of you who don't know, and I might have even got the name wrong as well, um, but he did a short. No, it must have been much later. He did a short film as a nod to the Punisher.
yeah, because the thing is, he is a big old comic nerd, is Tom Jane.
He is, yeah.
He does a lot of these things because he genuinely he loves the
Oh,
genre.
sorry, I'm completely out. It was 2012. He did a Punisher fan film in
Yeah, I
2012.
remember hearing about that.
That's no, it's actually really subtle, but it was so good that until very recently, people were still convinced that
Mm.
there were nods to him in the MCU films.
I'll be honest, I'd love to see him show up in an MCU film, doing anything,
Ah,
just because he's an actor I'm always willing to see turn up in something.
well,
It's like Scott
also
Pilgrim, he suddenly turns up as one of the vegan police, and it's like, what the hell?
didn't I mean was involved with the early seasons of The Expanse,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I mean that was incredible.
yeah.
That feels like as well like a distant cousin of this film, just in that
Mm.
you there's a very strong concept, but they had the luxury of building everything together and really giving it a strong script.
Well, I mean, it helps that the two writers of the book series were part of the scriptwriting team.
Yeah.
They were heavily involved from the start, and they always had a plan for how the books were going to go. Which, by the way, the series never got quite far enough, as far as they got about halfway through the books. The latter
Really?
half of the, if we'd had them on screen, would have been absolutely bonkers.
I imagine they probably did as much as they could with the time they had left.
Yeah, I mean, they got it to a point where it is a point in the books where things do change drastically, and it made sense for them to do that.
I love, by the way, they've just had one of them talk about mutants don't feel pain, and he punches the mutant. I don't think punching him is going to make a. Yeah.
Hmm.
It's very weird actually the way they treat um like deaths in this film. There is so much overuse of the stabbing through the head.
Hmm.
And it's was that I know it sounds odd, but was killing the main point of the game?
Um.
It just
Well,
feels like it's so front
In
and
Siege
center.
of the Citadel, the board game, the idea you did have a very specific objective to get to.
Hmm,
So you're actually the idea is that the Dark Symmetry have literally these citadels that have arisen on Venus and Mars.
yeah.
So because it's an ongoing war between the forces for Dark Symmetry and the corporations. They're active war fronts for these planets.
Okay.
And in the game, the board game anyway, the idea is that you're leading a team of Doom Troopers, or each player is leading a team of Doom Troopers into the Citadel to achieve very specific objectives to aid the war effort.
Hmm,
So you do run across. I mean, this film only touches on the basic mutants that you face, but even the prototype mutants you might face in the RPG or the tabletop game. But then they get gnarly. There's actually some really iconic design work in the Mutant Chronicles universe. They're big Gribblies, and they get big. We're talking Dreadnought big.
ooh.
Yes.
So is I mean, how much of that style? By the way, I realize I've probably made about 3,000 errors already this recording, just of
Eh.
considering the TV shows I've just plonked in there for a point and then moved on. Like, hello, I'm going to mention The Expanse. I'm sure there are not a lot of fans that care about that. But have they managed to pull significant things or style or presence beyond just a couple of plot points and a few names? Have they? Is does this feel like the film, good script or not?
I I feel like they've pulled the essence of the flavor. So effectively, what you have here is a team of Doom Troopers. These are, in essence, the original Doom Troopers.
Okay.
So the Doom Troopers are drawn from every corporation, and they are literally humanity's finest warriors. And they are sent into these situations to, when no other troops can handle it, the Doom Troopers get dropped in and kind of go to town. And I'm getting a sense because they've basically given us soldiers from every faction. So Missioner, Capital, Bauhaus, Imperial, they're all there, all represented. The Brotherhood in Perlman's character and his sidekick, the sister. And that's and they're going on a suicide mission. Again, that's why they're called Doom Troopers in the game, because they're not expected to survive.
Okay.
These missions are suicide missions. Everyone
Um,
knows what they're going in for. So
sorry, I'm just gonna. I'm very confused about this. The
hmm,
person I thought was the actress I thought was from Emmerdale,
hmm.
and I'm now gonna have to find out which film at the time she was in that they kept talking about Hollywood film. But this isn't her. This is
Oh, okay.
Anna Walton. And my goodness, have a guess what she also starred in that featured Ron Perlman in 2008. And we've spoken about it as being one of the most incredible female roles opposite Ron Perlman in a film. I'll give you a clue. Bros.
Oh, that's right. No, it is. I'm looking at the IMDb page. It is Anna Walton
Yeah.
as
And
Severin. Yeah,
she's the princess in Hellboy too. And
that's
wow.
crazy.
So maybe, yeah, maybe this is genuinely right. Well, you see, I don't get it. The person I'm seeing on screen looks so much like the Emmerdale actress. That's nuts. But yeah, maybe this is literally an off-duty Hellboy related shoot, or they enjoyed working together so much that a couple of people just did this for a bit of a laugh. I'm
I'm
gonna
trying to remember.
quickly.
Hellboy 2, did that shoot in the UK? Because I know this
Uh,
shot, I think, either on the Isle of Man or the Isle of Wight, if I remember.
might have. I'm trying to see as well if maybe Simon Hunter, the writer producer of this, um, maybe had other credits on. No, no, he didn't. I did wonder if maybe there was a Hellboy. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe one of the people involved in this was involved with Hellboy. Sorry, folks, we're not giving you thrilling chat. I'm busy googling.
See, what I found interesting when I looked at the cast is the fact that you've got one of the priests we just saw was Roger Ashton Griffiths,
Yes.
who played Mace Tyrell in the first Game of Thrones show,
Yep.
and then Steve Toussaint plays one of our team, and he's the Sea Snake in House of the Dragon.
There's there's
Odd
I
little,
think a lot sort of morph into these. Let's face it, they're British character actors and
yeah,
fantasy. I mean, yeah, you're going to see a lot
absolutely.
of course, by mistake, I've tried to look up Emmerdale cast and see if I can
Oh,
find this
you poor
person.
bastard!
I'm
How many
suddenly
pages
looking.
did that show up?
It's a lot. Most of whom I briefly remember being famous for about 2 seconds. They're probably doing mostly killer jobs nowadays, and I wish them all the best of luck.
That'll do it.
Oh well. Sorry, I'll let you expound more on the film because I think I'm not gonna get any more from this. I will add notes onto the
Hmm.
YouTube post when it's done to explain myself and why I got it so wrong.
They've got that diesel punk vibe going on though. They've managed to. nail that quite
Yeah,
well. For the budget they had, it's not an easy vibe to go for because it's not full on sci-fi. It's something a bit more brutal,
yeah.
but you still got to make it different to well anything for the last 70 years. And I mean, they've not done a bad job. And then I was
No.
curious, the reason why they're using vehicles like this with no computers or anything that are basically flying trains is because,
Mm,
well, they can't. The dark symmetry that's causing all this crap in the first place, it infects computers. Any computer system, it will infect and override. Because in so basically humanity's technology stagnates at this weird it's both highly advanced in terms of they had to iterate on all these technologies because they have no choice.
mm.
But they're using technologies which are really, really not what you'd expect in a setting 1,000 years in the future. So fair play to them for the budget they had. They've not done a bad job. It does come across as a little well. It is more than a little 40k in its aesthetics though as well. Let's be honest.
Yeah, true.
Which, but then Mutant Chronicles and Warzone were always they were pitched as this kind of alternative to the 40k aesthetic in some ways.
There's there's elements. It does feel like it's one of these projects that feels like there's three films vying for dominance.
Hmm.
You could have made a film just about this group of people, but I
Hmm.
imagine that they didn't have Devon uh, for full shooting. I imagine they had for the briefest period of time. Again,
Hmm.
Sin City veteran.
Yeah, and
Um,
this is a point where she was doing a fit because I think around the same time as this she did Dead or Alive, which not a critical success by any stretch, but it was the most high profile video game adaptation of the 2000s, arguably.
y- I'd imagine was she sucked in as well to all of those like Command and Conquer, really cheesy.
Uh, I'm not
You
sure because I
you
know
you know
she
what I
was in.
mean though.
I know she was in Too Fast Too Furious.
Yes, she was.
Uh,
She was. That's 2003.
yep. Then she did. Next time I'm aware of her in was Sin City. I
She also did the fascinating Debs.
ah,
I mean, she's actually done some other. She's done some like very interesting bits.
interesting.
But yeah, um, again, it's weird when you see somebody that famous just dropped into this.
Hmm.
Um, oh, and for those wondering, so the person I was convinced that I was seeing in this film was an actress called Leah Bracknell, who
Okay.
was on Emmerdale, and she, again, early 2000s, unfortunately, this was the thing. So she had, I believe, the first lesbian kiss in the show, or she was the first lesbian in a British soap. And that was a deal back then. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, yeah, it feels really odd to say it because, like, nowadays, l- less people give a damn, and the
Yeah.
people that do give a damn go completely over the top. But
Hmm.
back then, it was like, you know,
Yeah.
parents were telling
Because
their kids not to watch because there was a lesbian who wasn't doing anything, but she happened to be in the frame.
yeah. 'Cause, I mean, it's around the same time you had Brookside and Anna Friel
Yes. And the
and
other
what?
one that then kind of just was like, I'm not dealing with any of this crap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Pretty bad situation for those
hmm.
younger viewers. We trust me, that was still nothing compared to the idea of two guys kissing.
Hmm.
I think that was completely off the books. I don't even think that they allowed it in like a late night.
No, I think.
Are those flying
I think.
tractors?
I mean, that's the level of technology we're dealing with.
It does feel very much like sort of almost like the the Vipers in Battlestar Galactica. That kind
Yeah,
of that very kind of blocky shape. Look at bless them though. Again, they are just trying to do as much as they can. They're using. They've probably got the actor on a little gimbal as well. So when he
mm,
moves around, the wobble of the frame actually matches the wobble of the camera, the actor, and
yeah.
it's like a really good way to do it. Um,
It's a
and of
very
course,
low tech approach to
yeah.
things, but it works. I mean, oh,
Oh dear.
well, that
You
didn't go
see,
how they hoped it would.
you see, I don't know understand the geography of any of that. I mean, literally none of it. I know that's part of the fun though. And then
Mm.
there's yeah, I think at this point when I was watching this before this, I couldn't tell whether I'd sped it up myself because some of the stuff looks like really odd. Um, isn't it where this really cramped room as well suddenly becomes quite big and they do like a big spin
Yeah,
around the shot? Yeah, she looks so much like Leah Brackman. I think maybe I was the victim of somebody saying that and it made it national press. Hmm.
maybe. I do remember when this film was in production, it did get a reasonable amount of attention, especially in some of the genre publications. It was. I remember when it was announced and during production, there were quite a few features
Oh,
across
yep.
the
Here we
place.
go. Here we go.
Oh,
It's a tiny room, but there's enough to stick the camera on the little spinny thing
yep.
and just spin it around. They do. I have to admit, they do well out of this. Um, it's like a small scene. They can shoot it on a single stage. They're not spending any money, and they know they can just go to town. This is one drop pod. If this was Space Marines, there wouldn't be a single word. Maybe there
No,
would be the odd that one of them would just like kiss his bolter, mutter a holy prayer. That would be it. But
yeah. For a
no,
space
no,
marine, this is another day at the office. This is like,
yes.
hmm, we're going in fast. Excellent, brother.
Actually, this is, you know what? This is probably a more realistic version of what drop pod situation would be.
Oh yeah, this is why we don't put Guardsmen in drop pods because it gets squishy very quickly.
Also, as well, the awkward small talk.
Mm.
So, you doing anything afterwards? And I love the fact as well that they decided that it's only after they've gone through a building, which means almost lethal
Yeah.
deceleration, and
Now
then
they pulled the
they're like,
backup
yeah,
chute.
let's open the backup chute. That will help. I honestly, for at least one of them, I think it's too late already.
Mm. Gosh, that was a
They,
quick burst.
that was yeah. They've well, this is the thing as well. I mean, bless them. They CG as well at this time was still not.
Yeah, if you didn't have the money, CG could be real basic at this point.
But at the same time as well, they were still trying to do it like the expensive stuff. They didn't
Mm.
have, is it called the environment? I keep getting it mixed up. The environment, the
Uh,
atmosphere, the
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 volume.
lands, the volume.
No,
They
the
didn't,
volume only came about in like the last eight
yeah.
years,
And
specifically for the Mandalorian. So,
people now know what the volume is. Heck,
mm.
I've got a guy who wants me to. Uh, I completely forgot about the film school stuff. Wow, good for me to finally be returning to that. But there's a friend of mine who is planning something at the moment that is very much a fan film, but wants to use the volume, and he can do because he has access to it.
That's
And I'm
fantastic.
thinking, yes, but at the same time, don't want it to be one of those volume films.
No,
Um,
it's kind of funny because when they first came out with Mandalorian and told everyone about what the volume and explained what the volume was and how it had contributed to the sets,
mm.
people were blown away. And it's astonishing to me that in the space of what 6 years, since that first series.
Yeah, it's
It's
become.
it's
I think it's laziness. I think
yes.
it's the same. It's the same thing that I think we've said on this before as well. Is that everybody has a camera phone.
Mm,
Does that mean that we're all producing a lot more beautiful pictures?
yeah.
No. In fact, most people are just producing dross or
Yeah.
pictures of their coffee or selfies. And hey, you're happy with that? Great.
Mm,
But the thing is that very few people are trying to push the medium. And when you
yeah.
get such a helping hand, and for those who don't know, by the way, the volume is just imagine a very big backdrop. By the way, we've just had one of the most, arguably one of the most realistic grenades go off
Yeah.
because they're
Uh,
small, they're ugly, they're messy. But if he's not in direct line of shrapnel, which is a bit of a miracle, but yeah,
mm,
um, but because you've got this backdrop and you can play footage on it,
mm,
and I believe as well you then it ties up to the camera so the camera can see the angles and
yeah.
you're on a digital set, but it's also physical.
But it's a
Um,
live image.
yeah,
So rather than a green or a blue screen, you actually have something to act against, and they can
pro-
build the sets around it. And and personally, I think it's great. Like you say, it's a technology over. It's very easy to, like any technology, it's very easy for it to become a handicap, and for
yeah.
people to use it without really understanding the intricacies.
And the
And
worst thing is if they just say to the actors as well, look, here is your landscape. You can
yeah,
react to it, but for the next 20 scenes, you're just going to be walking through it, but all from the same angle because
yeah,
we know the best angle for this type of technology.
yeah,
And that's
and
when it becomes a bit of a problem.
and it's kind of why productions like Andor, not just, I mean, it's a cracking story that they put together for that first season, but one of the reasons it was so well received was how much of it they shot on
Phys-
location,
yeah, physically.
and it does make a difference, which and it's weird because I actually do like what the volume makes up, what it makes available for people,
Mm.
but I also do get how it has become a bit of you can actually tell a lot of times now when something is being shot on a volume type interface,
Yeah.
which is a crazy thing to say because it doesn't give you the same sort of fakeness as we used to get with green screen, which you had to be quite you had to be able to invest in it to make it work. Whereas a volume, you can match it, you can create any environment you like. It's a weird situation, but I do kind of like how the pushback against the volumes encouraging is getting people to go out and try and do. I don't want to call it proper filmmaking, but on location shooting, which had become difficult to do. It's an expensive thing to do. It's difficult.
It is if you've got I think if you're trying to do say something like this, a wide street scene
Hmm.
and you need a lot of extras and you need a lot of and it's suddenly a big production and getting a lot of this done with talent and sets and props and everything, even a simple scene like this takes a lot of work and fair play to them.
Hmm.
They've really filmed the crap out of this because
Yeah.
this would have been an expensive day, but anything that involves small quiet scenes, and I think this is where Andy did so well, is that they've realized that actually you can use so many places that are cheap. I mean, they filmed in the Barbican. Like you
Hmm.
walk around a couple of the areas in the Barbican, which is, for those who don't know, it's um, think of it as a council estate built after the war, um, but they wanted to do it, although it's very brutal in its style, they wanted it to be futuristic and they
Hmm.
wanted it to be like quality.
Yeah.
And so it is, many people will describe it as being hideously ugly. A lot of people absolutely love it. And the studio there is like 500,000. But the corridors there are so iconic. They turn up all over the place,
Yeah.
including Andor. So
Yeah.
there are cheap ways that you just set up a couple of cameras, maybe a light or two, and boom, have two people walking down.
Well,
But
didn't
yeah,
Rogue One redress Canary Wharf tube station for part of the
l-
Scarif base? A bit of it we never
loads,
really saw, but it was in the
l-
trailers.
lots of people have done that. I mean, my goodness, the end of Civil War, I think it is, where Black Widow goes up to Tony, um, and basically says like, "We're screwed up." I
Mm.
believe that's in the Queen Elizabeth Exhibition Centre, which is the brutalist style building next to Waterloo Station. And that very alcove is a place that I've sat on the floor and read a book many a and they just blocked it out and added a background in, and boom, Bob's your uncle. And that's the
I mean,
beauty as well. These guys are using every single like shots like this. They
mm,
they probably just grabbed the actor and went, right, we've got a scene where we need you sat there looking cool. We'll shoot a separate plate for the other actors afterwards. Can you
yeah.
can you do this? And in one day they'll zip through as much of the film script as they can. And remember, we went over this period, and I do again. Oh, I'm going to piss so many people off with my dates. So Lord of the Rings, the original, we're talking what two?
Lord of the Rings was
No,
2001, 2002, and 2003. Shot
right. So
over 99 to 2000.
okay, cool. That's the important thing. And then the Hobbits.
The Hobbit films were the 2010s. I think they were, I want to say 2011 through to 2012 they shot, then
Right.
released over 2013, 14, and 15, I
C-
think.
So you look at this film, and yes, there are again the crossing of the line makes me physically ill. Like the guy who directed did the camera stuff. A lot of it's just really bad
Mm.
because they want to get the shot, but it doesn't edit together. Um, and some scenes make literally no sense. But the way it was shot, you could actually step back and go, you look at the original Rings, you look at The Hobbit, and you look at this in the middle, and it has relevance because the fact is that by the time we got to The Hobbit, even Peter Jackson was like, no, screw the shooting reel. We're
Mm.
just gonna stick our leads in front of a green screen and make them cry.
Well,
They're just
yeah, I mean, Hobbit's an odd case because, I mean, there was a commitment there to getting the dwarves consistent, and in in the Lord of the Rings, they were able to fake it a lot more easily because they could
because
shoot the
there's
hobbits
less.
and
Yeah,
Gimli together, and then they could merge them with. They were quite clever in how they used the size doubles to
yeah.
cheat things. And in fairness, if you actually watch the original Lord of the Rings movies, the times where the Hobbit and dwarf actors actually interact with human-sized actors is not as many as you think. Or when they do, they are actually cheating quite a lot. I mean, the scene where in Return where Gandalf rides off
Hmm.
with Pippin, sorry, when Merry and Aragorn run up to the stuck to the walls of Edoras to watch them leave. One that is Dominic Monaghan and Viggo Mortensen together.
Yep.
The guard that Merry runs past is the size actor for Gandalf, Tall Paul.
Hmm.
And then actually when they're on the rampart, Dom is just kneeling down. So there's actually no camera trick involved. It's simply Viggo Mortensen and Dominic Monaghan in the same shot. One was just kneeling down. But that's
Oh,
it's a lot harder to do that when you are supposed to have a full cast of dwarves, and they are supposed to be the focus, and Gandalf is much more. He needs to look taller, so
but I
I
think
can
that
get I
they
can
have
get
a
why
problem.
it actually did
Yeah.
annoy McKellen and got him to where he was, because it was for one thing, it's also a very intensive scene that he was involved
Hmm.
in terms of the moving parts. But I'm not sure if there was a way they could have done it any differently. And in fairness to Jackson, once they realised Vitalik was taking on McKellen, they went to great lengths to make sure he was comfortable and give him breaks and give him that chill out room so he could relax and decompress from it. Because it's
Yeah, I think. Sorry, I think what I was getting with this is that they instead of, whereas before they would, you're right, they would do that trickery.
mm,
It's that they would include a lot of the original scene in there. There would be
yeah,
elements of real, whereas by the time it got to the Hobbit, they would just like make everything green. And I think, yeah, it is. I mean, it is difficult. You're right. It's
mm,
why as well the poor old dwarves in the second, third Hobbit films
mm.
had a pretty rough. Oh, by the way, we are now on to the rope section of
Is this the one where
Steve.
they flip a plate and because we see one character his hand is burnt and then suddenly it's the wrong hand because he's holding he's holding a rope for someone. I was reading.
I genuinely can't. I tried with this. I mean, again though, it's really clever. You have a really small area that you're filming.
Mm,
You can roll stuff. You can certainly do effects with lights. Um, they just green screen out the floor, so
mm,
they're literally standing on a little, and even when the rope stops as well, they're literally just stood there.
yeah,
It's really well done.
it is
Um,
though a very brown film.
yes, a brown hue. Yeah. And also, it has got elements of oh gosh, Alien Resurrection,
Yeah,
which has an interesting sort of line at the moment. Though admittedly, that's I think that's above like fire or aliens on fire. I remember. God, Perlman was doing a lot of this stuff at the time, wasn't he? He was really exercising all that weird stuff.
he was. I mean, in fact, he's always had one of those faces. I mean, his big break was as the Beast in the Beast in the Beast TV show
Now, here's
with
the thing. Are you I am very comfortable with us spending the next 20 minutes plus just talking about the majesty of Beauty and the Beast. If anyone's listening, by the way, am I allowed to swear on this? I
I
don't know
mean,
if you've ever covered this.
I mean, I've
Basically,
sweared.
right. Basically, sod off if you don't want to hear about a really underrated, amazing TV show that was based on Beauty and the Beast, has a lot of Neil Gaiman in it.
Yeah,
Pre-Neil Gaiman. Oh my goodness. This is Neverwhere. This is American Gods. This is, and I'm sure I'm remembering a lot of this far more affectionately than it was at the
yeah.
time.
I mean, you've
But it
got
was
Ron Per
also it's Ron Perlman looking like fucking Lion-O.
yeah, but opposite Linda Hamilton
Mm,
and with a supporting cast that is actually, I mean, Armin Shimmerman, Quark, is one of the recurring supporting cast. Roy
really?
Dotrice, yeah, Roy Dotrice
Oh
as
my God.
father, who's one of the great acting legends to my mind of the
Mm.
20th century. Doesn't get anywhere near the credit he deserves because he's always been in quite low budget features and productions, but always kills it.
Oh, I just looked up. Right, folks, just type in Beauty and the Beast and then type in Ron
Yeah.
into Google. And you will, the weirdest thing is that in recent years, somebody in real life who's known, I believe, as the Bride of Wilderstein has actually, due to various surgical operations, has ended up looking very similar to Ron Perlman in this. I wish I was joking, but
Oh,
it's
I think
true.
I've seen those pictures.
Because with the addition of the cheek implants and eyebrow implants,
Mm,
and yeah, but it is one of them. It's a beautiful piece of and
yeah.
just it changes him just enough to be technically a beast, but also kind of a very artistic furry,
Mm,
but also just cinematic enough to charm Linda Hamilton in arguably her hottest ever role. And I do
yeah.
apologize for people who are offended about me saying Linda Hamilton was hot in, but like
She
in terms
was.
of
I mean,
TV shows where you, especially as a young lad, you got a little bit convicted and confused. Beauty and the Beast was right up there.
and let's be honest, Ron Perlman has a voice for the ages. So even with
God,
that makeup, you still have this wonderfully deep, melodious voice coming out.
it won 6 primetime Emmys.
Yeah.
Wow, this I thought it was like something that was like when we saw it, we got it because it was relegated to us. I
Yeah, I
didn't
mean,
realize it actually did well.
yeah, I mean, I didn't actually see it until either the late 90s, early 2000s. I knew about it because SFX did a load of features where they sang the praises of it,
Mm.
and it made me well aware of what the show was and all the beats and who was in it and whatnot. But I think it was Channel 5 showed it in the end because I never saw it on the Beeb or ITV or anything like that.
It
So
was it was on ITV on its first run,
okay,
and it was on, I believe it was on the same Tuesday night slot as Manimal ran.
oh
Um, we're not going, but um, but for the one person out there who knows what Manimal is, got your back. We'll come back to that. But yeah, I'm pretty sure. Beauty and the Beast was ITV.
yeah, they did it. Actually, I remember because they did have Highlander as well as a few other shows, but they were always in
Wow.
really weird slots because of how ITV worked in the UK. Especially at that point, it was all well. You had the regional channels,
Yes, yes.
and a lot of the time, you could never guarantee if they were going to show the same stuff. In so, especially a lot of the import shows, you had no guarantees of where some stuff was going to be aired, which was it made
Yeah,
it a
it's
pain in the ass.
um so I keep addressing those people listening. We might be the only people listening to ourselves here. You realize this at the end.
Oh yeah,
Oh no,
absolutely.
no, I will get Logan Blaze to listen to this. Absolutely. Um so shout out to Paul and thank you for being our one listener. But so back then, because the American networks weren't the way they are now, with each having their own online service and all of that stuff. Um, they were just the regular channels. So selling stuff over the pond and vice versa was a far simpler affair, especially since video hadn't really kicked off for TV shows.
Yeah,
It was doing well, obviously very well, by the late 80s on for films, but not for TV shows. Um, so, like for instance, ITV, you would find every good new show that was on the main networks would come over to the BBC. It wouldn't often be given the same reverence as the
mm.
American side. Um, I mean, think about it now. If they did a new series of Friends, well, you would have BBC and ITV fighting to show that prime time Saturday night.
And odds on
And
they'd lose out to something like Sky, who would just throw all the money in the world at it. But
yeah,
but I mean,
uh, and
I mean,
then and then of course the classic Star Trek Next Generation.
yeah, I mean, for the longest time, any genre shows BBC had went straight to BBC Two,
Hmm.
6 till 7:30. That was the Trek Buffy slot traditionally,
Oh, yeah, Buffy was huge.
and then X-Files was from like 9, 10
Ooh,
o'clock on BBC
yeah,
Two until it got big. Then they shifted it across to BBC One
BBC
after
One.
the 10 o'clock news.
Yeah.
24 was the same. That aired initially on BBC Two for the first 2 seasons, then shifted to no, first season was BBC Two, second was BBC One, and then Sky got the rights for season 3 onwards. Just funny.
Curse them.
Uh, Speaking of
Twin
Buffy,
Peaks.
yeah, Buffy, you had the whole thing where BBC got Buffy and Channel 4 won rights to show Angel, so the crossovers made no
Yes.
sense.
Yeah, that I forgot about that. That was so weird.
Yep.
At least
Uh,
they didn't schedule them across from each other.
No, that's fair. Channel 4 also got Babylon 5, for which we will be eternally grateful to them because
Absolutely.
they marketed the hell out of that show. Bless them.
They did, yeah.
But, yeah, it was a fascinating time in the late 80s, mid 90s. Well, through to 2000, really, for genre of any sort. So,
Buffy as well. Buffy got figures that were proportionately massive.
yeah.
I'm trying to remember what it was, but it was like you couldn't just take. The problem they had, I think, at the time was that they could only take proportionate amounts of people watching. They never knew how much
Mm,
exactly. And I believe as well there was something in the way that they took them that at certain times the figures actually didn't reflect the true numbers watching the show.
yeah.
Um, and Buffy apparently was always much bigger. And most of the time as well, it was the biggest thing. Like Buffy and TNG were huge.
Yeah. I mean, they were real anchor shows. I mean, after TNG, Beep still cracked on with uh, DS9 and Voyager.
Yep.
DS9 especially, it treated much better than I thought they would. Uh, but then I think Channel 4 got Enterprise, no good loss, but Channel 4 also got Stargate, which I'm still amazed how long that series went, to be honest.
I think as well oh, what was it as well?
On BBC also had Farscape.
Yes,
All hail
that was it.
Farscape.
Yeah. At some point we might have to try and tackle that, but that will be on our follow-up series. Oh my God, are we still watching a TV show? By the way,
Yes.
at this point, Thomas Jane has seen Pertwee, I believe, again,
Uh, I'm
because
not sure.
he said, I know that man. But didn't he leave him like a week ago?
Yeah, left him on the battlefield a week ago and handed his MIA papers to the dude's wife. So,
Yeah. Okay, good to know.
see, one of the funny things though is, although you've got Mitch Hunter and Max Steiner and um, Duval, Devon Aoki's character, who are kind of like three of the more iconic named personalities from the universe,
Yeah.
because they do, and they have very distinct looks to them. So Mitch Hunter is always in the fiction. He's always followed by his dog Pride.
Okay.
Uh, Duval, she's got very distinctive like tonfa knife swords. They're kind of funky, but very distinctive look. Max Steiner, though, the, he's what they call a Venusian Ranger,
Okay.
one of Bauhaus's elite. He wears basically not powered armor, but matte white carapace armor with a skull face mask and a giant minigun that has long blonde hair. He's like a sci-fi Viking gone really but way more Germanic.
Okay.
But there's none of that in this, which I find really fascinating
Hmm.
because they've gone for this. They've taken these personalities and made them much more prequel types, which is kind. If they did it for budget, I get that. It's just interesting if you're familiar with the setting and who these characters, what their origins are in terms of their personalities and the history. It's just really interesting.
It's
So
I do like as well that I mean I know it's a bit nonsensical the reason why they have this scene. By the way, as well the quality of the lighting keeps changing as well,
it does.
which which makes me think that they had different teams and they shot these at different times. But I think in terms of a whole film, they should have really based the film here. I mean, I know people the whole it's a quarry thing,
Mm.
or in this case, a freshly painted backdrop, which looks looks like the paint is still wet, in very
It
wet
does
in
a bit.
places. But it does look really. I don't know. I just think when you give the actors something more to play against, they're in
Hmm.
an, even if it's a big empty space like this, they've got something back. I think it just works.
It is somewhat funny that Pertwee's gone through this phase where you can pretty much pick like from the 2000s, like 5 or 6 movies where he has a scene like this, where he's messed up and he's talking to someone else next to him. And it's like that's a very specific scene for one character to end up doing over and over again. You know.
Yeah, and I think he was getting a bit sick of being the one who died.
Mm,
Like he sort of inherited that sort of Sean Bean vibe for a while. Um,
mm,
I don't know. I'm still hoping at one point that he does a Doctor Who thing, but I
yeah,
appreciate that it's for him. It's a big ask because of
it is.
what it means. Oh, this is I believe this is where we start seeing the rather shocking streamlining of the team. Um, and some of it is really almost without applause. It's just like you're gone by
Yeah,
nice knowing you. I guess though that was the way it was always meant to be.
yeah. I
And
mean, it's always been a bit of a suicide mission. It's just like I say, it's quite unflinching in how it goes about offing people.
they do all get, I suppose you can say that at least some of the fighters do get that sort of last stand moment.
Mm,
Um, and it's nice, I suppose, as well. It makes it easier story wise for them to right. They're down there. That's it. Game over. Boom. And then the rest of the cast can move on with what they've got to do.
mm.
It's a long drop, by the way, isn't it?
It is.
Okay.
I do kind of appreciate how they lean into this thing where everyone's using
Gaelic.
well Gaelic and they're also having to use literally medieval broadswords.
Yeah. It's I like it. Is he shooting is he shot a gun so much? Yeah, he shot a gun so much.
Yep, he's going to roll a one for a minute on the plasma gun table.
Oh wow. Oh wow, give me a sign. I don't think the sign is going to be the one that you want to see.
Whoops, Daisy.
Wow. God, that's swing. So were there plans to do more of this?
I honestly don't know. I mean, I was quite surprised when it cropped up because Mutant Chronicles, whilst it was a known IP in amongst genre fans, it wasn't really a massive one.
Yeah.
Not really. So I was quite surprised when it got picked up for a film
Hmm.
and with actors like this. I mean, Ron Perlman, Tom Jane, John Malkovich.
Yeah,
That
names, which
that's
is good. Yeah.
although they did all have reps at this time for doing lower budget films.
Hmm.
These weren't actors who you would expect to be doing very low budget films, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. They did have a rep for a certain quality to their output. And this is, I mean, this is a not a great film, but it's got a few bits of charm to it. Like you say, the cinematography is all over the place.
Hmm.
It's I can imagine I can't imagine that from your perspective as someone who actually has attended a film school, watching it going, "Why are you doing this?" I must imagine you were valiantly holding back your rage at the screen.
And for the third time in this recording, I remember that I mentioned that at the start and then forgot about it. Yeah, it's just one of those things. As a when you're training in film, you learn about the basics, what you um, and the fact that so much of this for segments is completely against that means that the director said, "Look, I don't care how it edits together. I want this to be a feel. I want this to be a look more than actually make sense in the moment. That's a choice. That's not something that he did by accident. He didn't do it by
Mm.
being lazy. There would have been an editor on this as well. So, and look, other scenes like this, all good, all well shot. So it's just they did what they could with what they had. And again, like the director, I checked the last film he made was something far, far, far more down to earth. I believe it starred Sheila Hancock as like a pensioner that wants to. It's a real sort of like British kind of comfort movie, inspiring. So for whatever, he's done this film, it's got him on the map, and he's gone on to bigger and better films. But he's also tried to stamp his visual style on it. And in a couple of places it has worked. And it's easy
Mm.
for me, like especially for me, with this kind of stuff, to go, oh yes, I think it's not this. Yeah, but if you enjoyed this or you get any enjoyment out of it, good for you. Because
Yeah.
he's done his job. And the fact is as well that people must have people put 25 million into this.
Yeah. I
So
mean, that's
there
not a
must be
small.
a reason why they put it in.
Mm.
I'm just trying to look at. Apparently, they've estimated this is the numbers, which is doesn't really have a great success rate at telling us what home video earnings are. But it's saying that this apparently made 600,000 on Blu-ray sales. I think that's got to be short. That's got to be short.
Hmm.
They made 2 million at the box office, and the budget was 20. So I think the big thing is in the end credit sequence, we get to see how many executive producers there are, and also how many film funds did they apply to. So how much money did they write? I imagine there's probably a bit. Oh, yes. There's some weird stuff that goes on here.
Yeah.
So
The-
they are above the runway of death. Is that like an assembly line for mutants?
Pretty much. I mean, part of the shtick of the Stark Symmetries is they just have these factories churning out mutants and
Okay.
weird bioforms and put it this way, the Adeptus Mechanicus in 40k would shit themselves to have half the stuff that Dark Symmetry has available to them.
Yeah.
If you want to play Dark Mechanicus, find yourself some old Dark Symmetry miniatures from Warzone. That'll give you a cracking start because they are gnarly as ever living fuck.
Are these miniatures? That looks like miniature.
Uh,
If not, it's a very expensive set. Or maybe it's just CG. I didn't think it was good enough.
it, this is the scene I heard about where apparently they mirror one of the panels. So Steiner, whose arm is burnt on one of his arms is burnt, suddenly it flips to him pulling the rope, bracing the rope with his burnt arm, which is no longer burnt, but his other arm's now burnt,
That wouldn't surprise me.
which is kind of funny.
Right, so as we're looking at him.
Oh, that
Oh,
was it.
that
Just
was it. Yeah. Oh.
I have no idea why they did that. But,
He's it's you see, he's not actually doing a heroic thing. I know it's a suicide thing, but
hmm,
he's also screwing them over.
a bit, yeah. I mean, there's this
Also,
whole thing where when they introduced him, they said he's a leader, but will he follow? And it's like, well, not really, because he's still a bit of an asshole. He doesn't change at all.
well, you know what Ron Perlman says? War never changes.
Mm.
I'm sorry. Oh, he's another hand grenades. Thomas Jane is just sick to death
Oh,
of seeing people blown up by. But you'll notice the hand grenades all have different levels of power. Ooh,
oh, ouch.
that's that's a tad convenient. So the oddest thing is that when I first saw this, I was like,
Hmm.
this is almost like this is almost like a bit like a modern like horror film in the like Saw, where this guy is basically being tortured,
Yeah,
but almost for our entertainment. But also with the like the weird shaving head on one side, kind of looks a little bit more like his Expense character.
there is that. Yeah. I mean, there's a. Have you ever played Quake 4?
Oh gosh, yes, but a long time ago.
Well, you know the bit kind of midway through where you get your character gets captured and gets converted into partly converted
Oh
into a Strog. There's big vibes of
yes,
that here.
yes, yes. I think so.
Mm.
Don't you play as a? Yeah, it feels like you almost play as. Maybe I'm getting
Well, you
confused now.
kind of get enhanced into one of their troopers, but you don't get the
Yeah,
memory implant
and
or the mind control chip. So
and then afterwards, it's like you almost sort of managed to get back to where you were, sort of.
yeah, and it's got a
Yeah.
nice mechanic where you can actually now access areas that only Strogs can because they read you as a Strog,
Ah, yeah,
which is kind
yeah.
of fun.
So sorry again to Doom 4 fans who have joined the litany of people complaining about my lack of knowledge. So when I first saw this, um, so Thomas Jane is essentially a bad guy, but he's not. He's a good guy, but he looks like a bad guy. I got
Hmm.
very confused because I got vibes of the Doom, the Rock film,
Oh
Doom.
yeah, yeah,
With the whole deal that it was meant to be. Well, the whole deal was it's like everyone was surprised that he was the bad guy, but it's really odd to see. Yeah, this.
yeah.
It's nice. It's nice makeup.
It
They
is. I
definitely
mean,
worked on it.
that's the thing. You can't fault the makeup work on this one. They put all the money they could into making these necromutants look gnarly as hell.
Mm. Um. Oh, and I think we're about to see Ron as well come back as well. And
Hmm.
look again, there must have been a set built for this. And if there was any part of this that was going to look a little bit Event Horizon,
Yeah,
this
this will
is
be it.
this is kind of it. So and bless them, they like that. That to me, I think that's got to be a yeah.
That's got to be a set with some model work and a bit of CGI roped in as
That's
well.
it. Or maybe a set with some clever foreshortening or something.
Maybe.
But yeah,
I mean, it looks good.
it is. And they've spent the money on the ends, which is what they should have. So good to them. Um,
Hmm.
and it is a genuine last stand as well, which
Yeah.
you don't think there's going to be a happy ending. Then Captain America's shield turns up. That is a bit of a surprise. I'll admit, I didn't expect that to happen. And the subtitles here are not really helping.
No, I had to say, Devon Aki. I'm so used to seeing her playing characters who are kind of very cool and calm.
It's
It's
odd to
actually,
see her lose her control at
yeah.
all. Yeah.
You kind of, it makes you kind of wish that she did more stuff, or more stuff that was people could see where she got to act like that.
It would be, yeah. Oh, you know what? I think honestly, by this point, I don't think I'd was watching to this, so I hadn't realized the quite intelligent way that she loses her sword.
Yeah, it gets stuck.
Yeah, which is yeah, that's kind of the way it would go. And then after that, it's like, well, I can't really do anything here, so I might as well just stand around the Doctor Who console and wait for it to work.
And her reaction is like, fine.
Really? Fine. Give me a nail file. I'll see what I can do. Meanwhile, Thomas Jane's all about the money. Oh,
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 oh, here we go.
oh. Now we've been talking about the fact that poor Ron Perlman probably wanted a break from heavy makeup after doing Hellboy.
Yeah.
So he goes on this film, and they go, "Well, there's one problem. What's that? Um,
Um,
towards the end scene, you're going to be in heavy makeup again."
and we're gonna put this thing on your arm as well. It's like, oh, fine.
It's, she had, bless her, she's done really well. Um,
Oh,
but that's the most thankless way to go. You don't see her expression as she falls off. She has no final moment. She's just killed. And it's weird because she's almost like the last girl survivor. And I know that's a really cheesy cliche, but she's close to it because you didn't quite know which of these two was going to make it, if any of them.
mm.
But then of course Ron turns up looking like a melted snowman. And yeah, does she have the same misfortune of getting? No, she doesn't. You don't see anything else. Okay.
Well, they don't show it at least, so
Was what happened to her? Was it a?
I think he stabbed her.
Oh, right. Okay.
So
I'm pissing off so many people who like
she
this
she
film.
was trying to. She thought he was still in there, and I think he kind of is, but not as much as you'd hope.
He's wearing as well. I think because he's lost the hood cowl.
Hmm.
You realize that his costume kind of makes him look a bit like a page. It is quite an odd ensemble.
Hmm.
And yeah, I don't like. I have to admit, the arm thing is it shouldn't be as awkward or as disgusting as they've made it here, but and they've done a really good job with it.
Hmm.
It's just they focused on it so much.
Yeah, the whole thing where you see every time they focus on someone being mutated, and you see what was it? You see their arm stretching out in that slightly dodgy CG.
Yes.
And you just think,
No,
couldn't they have taken a screwdriver?
yes. So I'm trying to think. So are they under the spaceship that everybody else has already gotten on?
No, this is kind
They
of a
are
citadel.
so they are in this big thing that everybody is in.
I mean, the Earth's basically been evacuated at this point, so they're not
Oh,
trying to
so
say.
there's no one else left anyway. So
Well, there are people still evacuating, but there's no. This is purely a citadel of the Dark Fortress.
okay.
This is them trying to prevent them going full ham and wiping humanity out.
So after this, are the mutants dead, or is there rather? Are there any way? Is there? Have they lost the ability to make more mutants?
So, if I remember correctly, and I will stand to be corrected here. So,
Fans of the show and IP, please comment.
so at this point, humanity has basically the corporations have evacuated Earth.
Right,
It's kind of considered
lost.
lost, yeah. And the dark symmetry is kind of not a thing for the time being.
Mm,
But then some centuries from now, there's another point like this out in the solar system.
okay.
And in fact, I think that's what they're doing here. They might actually be this is what they're doing. They're launching it out into the reaches of the solar system. In I think I can't remember actually. I can't remember. Yeah, you know what? I'd forgotten that they actually did launch this thing. God, my memory of
So,
this film is terrible.
so are they technically launching the curse and the plague to another planet to start again?
Well, they're launching it out into the far reaches of the solar system because I think
Okay.
when the dark symmetry is encountered next, it'll be out by Pluto
Right.
on literally the farthest extent of the solar system. At which point, the corporations have all established themselves across Mars and the Moon and Venus, but not Earth. So, and they've
Okay.
not really progressed any further in terms of they've kept the tech very low as it is here. But man, that
And
was
you can imagine people standing up, and cheers, tears, popcorn going everywhere. Just
the funny thing. I cannot remember if this film actually got it actually came to cinemas near where. Oh, it's Isle of Man. I knew it was shot on one of the islands.
now, just let's just talk about. So I saw Pressman there.
Hmm.
So let me just. This is from IMDb. You're not going to believe this. Right. How much wrong can you fit into one paragraph? Producer
Hit me.
R.S. Pressman had planned as far back as the mid-90s to adapt Mutant Chronicles with an incarnation of the project helmed by John Carpenter. Sorry, with an incarnation of the project helmed by John Carpenter, stalled in development due to Pressman's suffering back-to-back performances of Judge Dredd and the Crow City of Angels and the Island
Oh,
of Dr. Moreau.
oh,
Pressman then later set up an incarnation of the project, 20th Century Fox, with Stephen Norrington slated to direct. But after facing several delays due to concerns over the budget, Norrington left to direct Blade. Okay. An incarnation to be held by Roger Christian also failed to come together, with Christian instead making Battlefield Earth.
oh.
And in October 97, Pressman said the film was to have a marketing plan that would include a merchandising program for a major toy line, publishing video games, and an animated TV series. Right. First off, that is a block of text that includes Judge Dredd, the Stallone version, The Crow. I'm gonna say it's the Stallone one because of the
Yeah.
timing. The Crow City of Angels, The Island of Dr. Moreau, and Battlefield Earth. That's almost like our watch list for the next month or so.
Yeah,
But they
Jesus
also said,
Christ.
and this is what people don't get now, is it would have been perfectly feasible for this to have a toy line because back in the 90s and the early 2000s, it didn't matter how grisly or gorish your film was, you could have a toy line.
Yep. And well, the thing is, if it was based on more on the designs from the RPG, they are
Yeah.
actually quite toyetic for designs. In fairness, so I could have seen that. That could have. I mean, clearly he's very ambitious in what he wanted this to be, but bless him,
He
aim
had hope.
high.
He definitely had hope.
Hmm.
Oh, the
Yeah.
director did have a cameo, which is good. They've also as well, they they listed the actors in alphabetical order. So
It's
so
always
Thomas
somewhat amusing
Jane
when
is
that
in
happens.
there, but not much
Yeah,
else. This is a very small.
it
This
really
is
was. I
they,
mean,
they
for how big a production it was, I
There we
think
go.
this is.
Camera operator Simon Hunter. Mm,
Well, that explains a lot then. He was literally doing
wow,
it all himself.
bless his heart. Oh, is somebody asking us? I've got a horrible feeling.
Oh,
Are you seeing any questions pop up?
nothing in the watchlong channel. Let's see if anyone's put anything in record. Nope, nothing in record
Oh,
text.
okay, phew.
So we are safe on that score.
Oh, no, I think I've mentioned before, like whilst we've been recording, that sometimes my Discord is very, very slow at
Hmm.
raising any sort of communication. So my Discord has literally just informed me that you've messaged me going, good to go. And I'm like, thanks, Discord. This is why I can never figure out who the hell is contacting me.
Nice.
God bless. But yeah, no. Oh, they did do models, by the way. I spotted there. There was a
Oh yeah.
model in it, which is brilliant. So good
Always,
for
always,
them.
always see a film actually have a model making team.
Yeah, it sort of it. I think that especially if it was that final showdown, I think those models did give it that
Mm,
extra realism that the CG didn't. And
mm.
fair play to them. They clearly found a place where they could make the World War II trench style scenes and went to town on it. So they could cover a lot of footage really quickly.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. This is not a great film.
It
It's
it does it does not. I'm not going to surprise you now, but people at home might be shocked to know that this doesn't have the greatest Rotten Tomatoes rating.
I am stunned by that.
Um, but here's the thing: it's not zero. Like
Yeah,
there's no rating of this that means it is absolutely without hope. It might disappoint people, but I'm sorry, people have spent an awful lot more at Battlefield Earth
yeah,
to be far more disappointed. So.
absolutely. I mean, this is hour 45, more or less.
Mm.
It's got a cast of actors that, I'll be honest, I recognise most of them from stuff that I've enjoyed, and they bless and put their all into this as much as they can do. Is it
Wow.
great? No. Is it? Is it just entertaining in weird ways? I'd say so.
Yeah.
Weird ways, probably not how intended, but it's a fact that it's a tabletop property that had a live action film 16 years ago
By the
with
way,
Hollywood stars.
shout out to Scallywag Travel, who was the travel agent for this film. They shot at Shepperton. They used a lighting company that I used to work for that is no longer in business. Yeah, good for them.
Yeah.
They look. Uh, I get the feeling that this was shot on film, which is great.
Hmm.
Stuart Pressman. Just
Rise
seeing
of
if any
Garth Thomas. Huh.
Viper Street. Wow. Wow. Okay. I'm gonna have a quick look at who Garth Thomas is.
Yeah.
So whilst I do that, I'm giving you the toughest job of the evening because people have obviously, you see, I've typed in Garth Thomas. Google thinks I'm looking for Gareth Thomas, the Welsh rugby union player, but no, no, not in this context. Um, why should somebody who has listened to us talk all over this film, why should they check out the original film with its original recording?
Well, I would say because it's a curio more than anything else.
Okay.
It's like I say, it's the first science fiction film I'm aware of actually based on a tabletop property.
Yeah.
Now we'd had D&D, the one with Jeremy Irons before this, and I think the sequel had come out before this as well. So we'd had those two films, but to see a role playing property that also had a board game and a
Mhm.
tabletop war game appear on the big screen with named Hollywood actors in 2008. I mean that's kind of what we're hoping for today, isn't it? With whatever
Mm.
Cavill and Amazon come up with. There's not really been anything, and let's be honest, it does look a damn sight better than a lot of the old 40K official films that they did for Games Day and the like.
Yes. Um, yeah, and I get the feeling that there's I do wonder I do wonder this and Ultramarine as well that although by trying to create something so large, a feature film, that they've diluted the very
Mm.
best of what they could offer. So if they had put this much effort, and of course they can't, I know they can't. They couldn't have gone out to people and raised money on the idea of a short film. They had to go make a
Mm.
feature.
Yeah.
But the thing is that if they'd been able to take the best of this feature film and put it into a short, I think it would have been amazing.
Yeah.
Um, the challenge that they have is that, yes, it's stretched out, but I'd say even stretched out, it probably has more than a lot of the official 40K shorts do, or especially some of the fan films do,
That's
because
fair.
of just general limitations.
Mm.
But then when you get that odd fan film that what's the one with the guardsman and the single space marine and the almost unseen Tyranid? I think it's just called Guardsman.
Possibly. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's minimum use of lighting, but really effective. Very, very tight. Like the whole thing takes place in an area of maybe 3-4 meters squared. And
Mm.
they everything is done to perfection with the minimum amount of stuff that they have. That's great. The only other thing that's done that is Astartes,
Yeah.
which it took a hell of a long time to do, and every shot was done to the maximum that it could do, and
Mm.
they didn't over egg it, they didn't overextend it. They probably could have done a 2-hour film for the same given the same resources that they did Astartes with. But what they
Mm.
elected to do is use the effort where they could and instead make an amazing short. And I think with these types of films, I think we're seeing that there's a great idea, but they just can't carry it through, or they lose hope in themselves and they try and they over egg the pudding. They try and do too much style without substance.
Mm. Well, I
If
mean,
you gone, sorry.
well, I was going to say, when you were looking into the producer's history of this film, it's clear
Mm.
that he had been trying to get it off the ground for well over a decade by the time
Yeah,
it came out. Which, I mean, given he'd also the string of films you mentioned, Judge Dredd, Island of Dr. Moreau, what was the other one?
you know what, I felt a little bit ill after saying the
Yeah,
first ones. I'm
they
trying
are
to
not
remember.
films that lit for box office delight, but they had big, they were big productions
Yes.
at the end of the day. So this represents a you'd almost think that maybe he was trying to get it done before he lost the rights, in a way, just so he had something out there. But I mean, I think it's a valiant effort at the end of the day. I mean, like you say, there's a lot of fan films out there. I mean, but are shorter and they have to work with a lot less and they can get something a bit tighter. But you're never really gonna. It's very hard to match the level of how to say this. CG is always loses something unless you can really invest in it.
Yeah.
I mean, we are reaching a point where with like the 40K trailers that led to the Prior Nexus show on Warhammer Plus and Angels of Death as well. Those are made for reasonably high budget. They look absolutely fantastic. I mean, I'd
Mm.
say you're nearing the level of the old Republic CGI trailers that I think was it Rush Studio Rush
Yeah.
put out,
Yeah. Yeah.
and those are the sort of thing where they are they're mini movies in essence, but they get across so much. I mean, if you watch all those old Republic CG trailers in one session, they form a really interesting narrative loop or a
Yeah.
narrative through line covering several years, but they don't necessarily tell you everything you expect, and they were released out of order, and you have to kind of put it together in your head how they actually go together properly.
Yep.
But there's some really fascinating stuff there, and we are starting to see it in some of odd places coming through in fan productions. I mean, I've been following a Mech Warrior slash BattleTech series called Hired Steel.
Okay.
It's only like maybe 5 minutes at most of the shorts, and we're barely through the first battle
Mm.
effectively. And it's literally just following a company of battle mechs attacking an emplacement,
Yeah.
company of mercenaries, and you don't necessarily see any of the pilots' faces. It's all kind of like from their POVs, uh, or when the people are looking at the mechs, the cockpit glass obscures everything, so they don't have to worry about getting the fidelity of people's faces down pat.
Okay.
But they've told a really interesting little narrative in there, and they've gotten voice actors from across the battle. Well, there are some professional voice actors involved. Other voices are provided by people in the BattleTech community who are known for their voices, like Tex from the Tex Talk series.
Right.
And it gets the essence of the universe across quite well, which is not always the easiest thing to do. And with Mutant Chronicles, I think they were trying to do that. They did strip things back to make it a prequel, so they didn't have to worry about a lot of the really gnarly stuff that would
Yeah.
have needed the big budget. 'Cause, I mean, like I say, in if they were setting it in kind of like the quotation marks current timeline of Mutant Chronicles, they'd have needed, oh boy, some of the costuming is choice.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find some pictures if you're not aware of it, because oh man, there's
Whilst you do that, I'm just going to very quickly say, so we've been talking about Pressman as well, the producer. Um, this is not, Pressman is not a light guy. By the way, he also did the movie version of Street Fighter.
oh dear,
But no, get this. He was also a producer on Wall Street, American
huh?
Psycho, Bad Lieutenant, The Abel Ferrara,
Wow.
Cherry 2000, Vampire's Kiss, Conan the Barbarian. Um, he's like his company, Pressman Films, has done over 90 productions, including stuff that's still to come out. For instance, The Crow. So there's definitely, this was low budget, but it wasn't put together with a. Yes, the director was eager to do this, but he wasn't exactly working with the producer. I think was the driving force, and I feel it's maybe a pet project for the producer. And considering that that's the same
Yeah.
producer that's been involved in Cherry 2000, Masters of the Universe, Conan the Barbarian, I can't actually see much of the other ones because there's so many of them. But I'm wondering whether he was basically a big old nerd.
I mean, it does sound a bit like it, doesn't it? Because I mean, this is a property that it's it, even at this point in time, it would have been a lesser known property.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew about it because I'd seen it on shelves in a local game store, and I'd seen a little bit of stuff in the. I'd seen it in a few gaming magazines. I think there was a magazine at one point, Arcane, that Future Publishing put out for
Okay.
went for about 4 or 5 years in the mid 90s,
Yeah.
and it was basically role playing games and tabletop, but wasn't Games Workshop. But
Okay.
hilariously, they were quite dismissive of any GW products that they reviewed, and if any Star Wars as well. They anything that was a big franchise, they kind of came down on. But they did review quite a bit of Mutant Chronicles product at the
Hmm.
time because it was around. It, like I say, you had the Warzone game that had become a bit of a property. It had done quite well. It was regarded as competition to 40K, which is a hell of a thing to consider when you look at where it went, because it kind of
Yeah.
disappeared for the longest time.
Is it something that I know that you mentioned that there have been other people that maybe with rights changing, it's kind
Hmm.
of had sporadic returns. Is it something that can come back now? Is it something that is back, but just in a very low key sense? It's like it's not like something I've seen splashed across the Fluffenhammer.
Well,
So
Modifius have they no longer have the rights to the RPG site to Mutant Chronicles or Siege of the Citadel. Um,
okay.
about a year ago, they did a big fire sale. If you'd had any interest in picking up their version of Siege, you could have
Mm,
got the whole thing for under 100 quid. Towards the
wow.
end, when they were getting rid of their last stocks, you could probably gotten it for under 30. Which, given I went all in and spent about 250 on mine, did hurt a little
Good
bit,
grief.
but it was actually a really. I thought it was quite a high quality product that I got in the
Yeah.
end out of it. It was a nice tribute to the system, and I mean, I have PDFs of the full Mutant Chronicles RPG system they did using their D20 system,
Mm.
and the Warzone Eternal Kickstarter didn't do badly. Let me just do a quick go to Kickstarter a moment.
Um, Whilst you do that, I'm going to very quickly just run through the films that happened before and after this from Pressman. So we had start off with American Psycho, then The Crow Salvation, Beautiful Country, I think quite small, Undertow, quite small, The Crow Wicked Prayer. Yes, that's the one with Furlong and Reed and Angel. Then we had Amazing Grace, which was by Michael Apted. So that's very decent,
Yeah,
responsible, worthy filmmaking. Sisters, low budget horror. Then Mutant Chronicles. Then Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans with Nicolas Cage.
wow.
Then Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps. Um, it in terms of a producer's output, my God, does it move
He's
all over the place?
yeah. I mean, he's not rested on his laurels at all, has he?
No,
He's
and
been
well, I think as well, his company is obviously still going. It's taken over by his son,
hmm,
but yeah, the last couple of years have been uh, Daliland, which is Ben Kingsley as Salvador Dali, Catching Dust, which is a British drama film, and then then The New Crow, which is out later this year.
huh,
Anyway, sorry, as you were saying.
interesting. The Warzone Eternal Kickstarter page.
Oh, go on.
It ran from the 5th of no, from the 2nd of May 2023 to the 1st of
Yeah.
June 2023. They aimed for $70,000 and they took
Oh,
163,000,
well done.
which is not the biggest Kickstarter, but it's 234% effectively in terms of what they wanted. And they're still updating. I mean, there's
Yes, I've just seen late pledges available here. Get your
yeah,
pledges
but
in.
they've
Tell
but
them the
they've
Fluff
got
and Hammer
update.
sent you.
I mean, they've got updates about they got they've got one from June 18th. So
Nice.
they went to Origins, ran the first ever Warzone Eternal tournament, had some
Ooh.
wonderfully. I'm just posting these in the watch
Oh,
along
well,
channel.
the artwork's lovely.
Isn't it just Warzone? Mutant Chronicles has always had a really nice aesthetic. I mean, there's a nice spread here of artwork from the original setting from Modifius time and the stuff that Warzone Eternal have put out more
Yeah.
recently. And it is a nice spread, let's be honest. There's some interesting
Hmm.
looks going on. It does have its own very distinct imagery going on. And the game
Yeah.
it's in terms of Eternal, they have a throwback in terms of visuals on the minis, if I remember rightly. So, which I know
Oh,
for me was a bit of a. I wasn't really too chuffed because I did like what the Prodos range had done. These felt a bit more of a throwback to that 90s aesthetic that Warzone had had. A bit of a fallback. But let me
Okay.
just post these because they've got some pictures of some of the box sets. So this first one, that range of the skull mask and the minigun, that is basically Max Steiner. Our
Right.
German officer who offed himself, that's how he looks in the Mutant Chronicles RPG and tabletop game. Wearing a skull face mask and toting a big old machine gun.
Interesting.
But I mean, I've probably been a bit harsh. After the Wars and Resurrection look, I did feel that Eternal wasn't really for me. But it's got
Yeah.
a back. It does have an audience. There are people who backed it, and I do hope it goes to retail and does well because there's a place for it.
Yeah.
It is a really interesting setting in terms of the lore and everything. It's one that anytime I see anything Mutant Chronicles, I get a little smile because I'm glad to see it still going
Yeah.
because
You're
it's
you're pleased for it, and it's
yeah, it's this weird grungy alternate future that doesn't really have it's not really got a proper counterpart just because it's not just bizarre, it's so focused because most systems like this they go big, so you're looking at planets across the galaxy,
mm,
it's big broad sci-fi. No, this is the solar system. This is literally just this is humanity. There's this weird dark power that's arisen and it's fucked up our entire lifestyle, and we need to stop it from doing anything more, and that's all we can do.
so
There's no
it's
interstellar travel, there's no god emperors. Everyone's just kind of doing their best. But even when you flip to the dark symmetry side, there are actually personalities
yeah.
because there's apostles. It does lean heavily on some of the religious imagery and terminology for some of the characters across factions, to be fair. But you have the apostles who each have their own kind of area of the dark symmetry that is there, almost like the gods of chaos, but a bit more focused and down to earth.
Hmm.
But oh, actually, you know what? When I looked at this Kickstarter originally, I'm sure they didn't have some of these pictures, these miniatures up, because some of these actually do look really lovely.
Well, they probably just as time has gone on, they've been able to provide more and more info, and
Hmm.
they've managed to sort of solidify that the processing and the timings and let's face it as well, you don't just start one of these without at least getting a pipeline of artwork
No.
to hand out as treats along the way. So they're doing a good job, it looks like.
Hmm.
But I think a lot of it's just going to be the case of how well does this take off in terms of people playing each other and
Yeah.
how enjoyable is that experience for people. So
Absolutely. But to answer your question about why should anyone watch this, well, one
mm,
thing, it's cheap. I
yes.
I bought a DVD. Don't know about you, but I paid £3 for mine off Amazon.
I I I didn't buy it via a DVD because I couldn't trust my post this week, so I had to buy it online. It cost me significantly more than £3.
Oh, ouch.
I have clawed back a significant part of the budget for this film. But I'd like to think that if anyone comes after us for infringement, which by the way it shouldn't do because I doubt anyone even know this film exists in terms of IP.
Yeah.
In terms of properly, just in the larger, in the big scheme of things. But I actually think it's quite nice that it's getting a shout out. I think stuff like
Yeah.
this needs to be remembered. I think it's, it and somebody there in some accounting office somewhere is going to look up and go, Bob, yeah, somebody bought a copy of Vampire Chronicles last week. You're like, what? But willingly? Yes, willingly. But where do we assign the money to? I don't know. So
Yeah.
yes, But it was nice, and the thing is as well, it's for the director as well. He's had a career off this, He's
Yeah.
he's gone on to other things. And I'm sorry, every I mean, we talked about Spielberg earlier. I'm sorry, the guy is not without a few bombs,
Hmm.
and I guarantee his bombs lost him more, or lost his company more than 25 million. So yeah, good
Yeah.
for this guy, good for the team, good for the actors for earning their paycheck and for doing as much as they could with what they had. Good to the art team and the CG team for putting together CG at a time when CG was not easy to
Mm.
get exceptional. And just congrats to everyone that they did this before Iron Man changed the rules on film.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I think after Iron Man, I think we're looking at Asylum, and that's almost
Mm.
it. For a while, there have been other bits that popped out. Ironically, I keep thinking about that Fan Four stick.
Oh,
Um,
the one other guy who did
the sorry, the Fantastic Four, the last Fantastic Four.
yeah, it was by the guy who did that superhero
Yes,
found footage film, wasn't it?
that's it.
Yeah. You
Um,
know, it's funny. That was kind of like the first Marvel of the kind of the modern era since like
mm,
Blade.
yeah,
That's kind of the first Marvel cinematic release that I skipped. I still haven't watched it, oddly enough. Which
it might be. Uh, It might be, especially after watching this, it might be worth a it might be worth a chance at some point.
mm,
Oh, and I don't know if you saw as well. Sorry, we're now breaking all concept of fourth walls here, and we're going to talk about another podcast on the fluff. So I sat down with Adam and George and talked about
yeah.
creativity, and about towards the end, I was talking about doing this and
Hmm.
watching movies, and they mentioned a movie that I don't think we talked about, and they said, "Oh, I'm really looking forward to you doing covering this film." And I don't think it was one that we'd even thought about.
No, I
So
think
I need to
I'm
now
trying to remember
watch.
now because I have listened to that podcast and I can't remember which film it was that they
I
mentioned.
know, I know. I'm actually a bit. I wonder if I just shoved it in at the end and just put it in my own notes. I'd like to think I did. Let's have a
No, no, I know the solution to this. Adam, when you edit this,
yes.
let us know which film you and George recommended.
Yes. Can you add it in? Is he really going to edit any of this? I mean, I wouldn't. I'd just give up and walk away. I'd be
That's
very much.
fair.
I would be like the editor on this film. I would just be like, look, do what you want. You've
I mean,
clearly got your own idea.
he put all 3 hours of me and Swanee just nattering up as one podcast, which I'm still amazed he did, to
And
be honest.
that was good.
Yeah, we both enjoyed that immensely. That was
Hmm.
great fun.
I honestly, I look forward to more of the same. I think that's the sort of thing as well that I think as well, more people. I mean, if somebody is still listening to this at this point that isn't Adam, um, and you've
Yeah,
not
guys.
been on a Fluffenhammer, I mean, come on, look at what you're balanced against. Look at what we've just done.
Yeah,
You can do better. Please do better.
for the love of God, please.
But should we call it a night, mate?
I think that's probably a good shout. We've
Oh,
been doing this now for God, nearly 2.5 hours, which I think that's a good run.
that's fantastic. People at work are saying, by the way, "Oh, you do these podcasts? Oh, could you send me the link? I want to listen to it." Now get this, they want to listen to it on their jog, on
What?
their yeah. I go out running. It'd be great to have something to listen to. I'm like, seriously, no.
We'd have to put a warning to avoid bridges and high points, otherwise there'd be a
I'm
risk of.
I'm thinking the only thing that we could maybe achieve is the sort of same sort of level as Luton's Sleep Club, but we'll see. Anyway, I'll let you do the honors and close. This was your baby, and it's honestly,
Yep.
thank you though for choosing this.
No worries. It's one that
It
always
it's
it always sticks in my mind, but it's really the only live-action grimdark movie that's intentionally grimdark and
Yeah,
based on a property like this. So
and we've had fun. So thank
yeah.
you so
So,
much.
so folks, that was Mutant Chronicles. He's been Adam. I've been
Hello.
David. We will let you know what we're going to do next time. If you have any suggestions for a film you'd like us to do, please let us know in the watch along chat, because we're open to ideas. I'm
If
certainly
if
having fun with this so far.
if you just want me to shut up, I can do that as well. And,
But yeah, and on that note, we hope you've enjoyed this. We certainly have. And have a good one. Later,
care.
folks.
Bye.
Bye bye.